Folks, welcome back to Untitled Chapter. This is Chris once again. Welcome back to Chris Wyatt Africa, folks. This is Chris coming to you live from central Pennsylvania. Well, in case you missed it, folks, it's election season in South Africa. I'm sure South Africans haven't missed that. Perhaps other folks around the continent, around the world, aren't paying attention, but it is, in fact, election season in South Africa. And, well, we've had continuing election coverage here, and it's only going to get more heated up as we get closer to the end of the month. The municipal elections in South Africa are scheduled for the 1st of November, despite the efforts of the Independent Electoral Commission to prevent that from happening, and the African National Congress and Economic Freedom Fighters. It is going forward. Pretty exciting time, and one of South Africa's newest political parties is the United Independent Movement, and its leader is Neil de Beer, rather well-known personality in South Africa, and the vice president is Fatima Abdool, somebody I knew before I even knew she was now the vice president. So, Neil and Fatima, welcome to both you. You were here last month. It's good to see you back again.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
No, you're very welcome. It's my pleasure. Listen, last month we had you guys on, and Neil was on his way to a campaign event, so he literally called us from a bakkie or a car or something like that, and it was actually pretty interesting. But we started to lose daylight there as you got close. I think it was in Port Elizabeth where you went on that call, if I remember correctly.
It was in one of those taxi combis that we got, and you're very right. We had 15 minutes to get in, but now I'm stable. I'm here, I'm yours, and yeah, it was PE. Now called Gqeberha.
Yeah, but I don't do the clicks very well. That's
I think by the time you say Gqeberha, you've gone right through it.
yeah, no, but I mean, I didn't realize that was actually an indigenous name, not a Bantu name. Yeah, so I mean, when I found that out, I was less inclined to give it a hard time, but. Because I'm a huge supporter of the Khoi and San peoples and the colored folks in South Africa. So I was actually, when I first heard, I'm like, what is that? What are they doing now? What are they doing? But anyway, but let's get to it. So Fatima, last time you carried the water for this conversation because we had Neil for about 15 or 20 minutes, and people were giving me a hard time. Ask Neil this, ask Neil that. I'm like, hey, I got the guy for like 20 minutes. We got some things to talk about. But then, Fatima, you did yeoman's work carrying the water after that. So welcome back to both of you. And Fatima, it's good to see you again. Are you ready now for kind of like a tag team conversation?
Oh, yes, definitely. I'm looking forward to it.
All right. So let me ask this question because, the media can be very, what's the word? Capricious. That's the word. Big word alert. Capricious. They can be very capricious in how they cover things, particularly in South Africa. Now, I saw big fanfare by SABC and ENCA and the print media for the African National Congress's manifesto launch on Monday. Lots of attention for the economic freedom fighters on Saturday and a little bit of attention for the DA on was it Saturday? I think they did this. Yeah. Anyway, but for their launches, I didn't see much attention for the Inkatha Freedom Party, which just launched theirs yesterday, if I'm not mistaken. Have you all, in fact, launched a manifesto? I hate that term. It's I prefer campaign strategy or campaign plan, but our platform. Have you launched something, Neil?
We absolutely did. We launched before anybody else about 3 weeks ago in a town called Witbank in Mpumalanga, where myself and the vice president were. And it was exactly what you are saying. It's not a party manifesto. It is a written obligation.
I like that, written obligation.
We made a written obligation to our people where we stipulated sentence for sentence our commitment as human beings to our citizens. A manifesto to us is, Chris, like the ANC, when a cat learns to bark, it still remains a kitty cat. So we've seen this mutation of manifestos and promises that spew out of the mouths of these liars and people that throw these subtle smoke grenades.
Okay, I got to interrupt you, Neil. Okay, this stream is a success already. I'm going to clip that. We're going to say that. That's already made my Friday, and now it really is a Leka Friday. So, okay, whatever comes out the rest of the way, whether we stay in joyous mood or we get combative in the conversation, that makes the day. That was Fatima. Could you believe he said that? He's talking about cats barking. That's hilarious.
I absolutely love the way that Neil can express himself. The message hits where it should hit, but you laugh. We in Afrikaans we say je lag met de traan. You laugh, but there's a punch with the
Yeah.
laughter.
Yeah. So let me ask this question. I mean, I'll bet that he probably says that even more effectively in Afrikaans. And I don't know. I know that that Neil speaks Xhosa, but and I don't know any Xhosa. So, but is it Neil? Are you as effective telling that in Xhosa and Afrikaans or better, or what's the deal?
Hulle sê in Afrikaans, 'n kat wat geleer het om soos 'n hond te blaf, op die einde van die dag bly maar 'n kat.
I actually got that. Now, Xhosa, I don't know, so that's not my forte. That's not one of the languages I speak. But okay, so you guys launched your party platform, your promises or your obligation that you're making to
Our people's obligation.
your people's obligation, to get that correct term, before anyone else did, without much fanfare. You got a little bit of press, but the media, as I talked to Leonard Max, I interviewed him this week, and I saw that News 24 was doing a roundtable with mayoral candidates, but there was the Good Party candidate, there was the DA, and there was the ANC. I'm like, okay, there are more candidates, and he wasn't invited to that. Interesting. So are you having any challenges getting the media to cover your events? And if so, is your focus using social media? How are you going about this, Fatima? I'll ask you as the vice president. Is it a challenge for the party to get attention, or how are you? Okay, first off, is it a challenge? If so, how are you overcoming it?
Yes, it is a challenge, but I think it's a challenge not just for us, but for many of the other small parties. Now, we're not just a small, well, I will never describe us as a small party. We are a growing party, but we are also the freshest party at the moment. The others are older than us, so they even get less attention from media. We get a bit of attention, but it's more so because of our leader, Neil de Beer, because he's such a strong leader. He gets a lot of attention. It helps us as a party to also get attention. But social media is our biggest platform at the moment. I don't know if Neil will agree with that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's what I was going to imagine. You know, it's the one interesting thing about, in terms of democratic elections, democracy, has been the advent of social media. It really has, in some respects, kind of leveled the playing field for smaller organizations, smaller parties, and for movements to get it. You know, when it comes to people's movements, social media can be very effective. Now, it can also be a dual-edged sword. It can be a real problem for you, but if you manage it well, so if you've got a good team with that. So when we talked last time, Fatima did a really good job carrying the water when you had to depart for the evening, and we were talking about, well, what will success look like in this? So I'm going to put you on the spot, Neil. Okay, it's not a hard spot to be in, so but I'm going to put you on the spot. Fatima and I talked about this. I mean, you're a relatively new party, only registered, I think, in July or August as a party, political party, something like that, and I'm not sure that initially you intended for it to be a party. I think you were just trying to get people's, and if I'm getting this wrong, correct me, Neil, but I think you were just trying to get people roused up and excited about trying to do something to change things in South Africa, but then you decided to stand people for office. So when I tried to frame what does success look like in municipal elections, given such a short timeline, Fatima and I talked about it, and she kind of stated that if you get anybody elected to ward councils, you're going to consider that a sign of success. You know, when I talked to Leonard Max, would he become mayor? Is that realistic? That's all. You know, so with UIM, is that where we're at? Did she get it right when we spoke last month? Is that a success, or have your ambitions grown based on how you're performing? Are you hoping to get more ward councilors? Do you have a target figure, or just getting people into city councils? Will that be considered success, Neil?
We've won already.
Oh, okay.
I'm done.
Okay.
Because victory is a conscientious decision by a movement to give hope. When you go into a nation that has been physically oppressed in mind, and you know what I'm talking about, Chris, you get to a systematic thing where the people do not believe that this country has a life beyond the ANC, that they believe that there's only one opposition that can fight, that they cannot fathom that there is a possibility that the rights of citizenry, the freedom of a process to rise, to topple a regime that currently is forming and is now fighting basic rights, if you get that right, where you can get a volume of people in a country that can change their mind and go, wait a minute, we can actually think for ourselves, vote for ourselves, and bring back not freedom, but freeness. This country is no longer fighting for freedom. We got it in 94, but did we? When you tell a person that he can walk around freely in a house, but he may not leave the premises, he's free. No, he's not free. So this country is saying, thank you, ANC. Siyabolela, Kialibucha, Shalom Shabbat, Inkosi, Baie Dankie. But it's time that you retire, because you could not, and this is a debate I'm going to have with the people. I'm going to release some inner secrets with you for the first time exclusively on your show about the inner ANC that has never been released before in my life. So victory today is the fact that more than 1.9 million per week are now following the words of the UIM in this country. That's victory to me.
Wow, that's impressive.
The secondary victory, obviously, in an election is to go in there and perform. We are contesting 1,000. This is a miracle. This is a God's miracle. We are contesting 1,200 wards, and we are not even 8 weeks old, Chris.
That's an incredible number.
200 seats in government.
That's an absolutely incredible number. I think that the total ward councilor seats are something like 8,700 in the whole country. So that's pretty impressive for parties just 8 weeks. Well, Fatima, with all this effort. By the way, Neil, I was gonna come back and say, well, you're not a politician, but it was a very political answer. But you got to the end and you actually answered the question. You explained where you're coming from, and I thought it was gonna be a political answer, but then you did come back and talk about it. So thank you for that. But Fatima, all this work to get registered. I mean, do you guys have a lot of people helping you on the ground, helping get candidates, pick candidates, and get certified and get registered, whatever process you have to follow to get? Because we saw that the candidate registration process was kind of horked up there. They did it a couple times, and which actually helped the ANC. But was this a lot of work for you, or do you have a team helping you out there, Fatima? As the vice president, I would imagine a lot of this falls back on you and a staff.
I'm going to be honest with you. The people that were running almost on air is the guy that was steering, that was managing and driving this was Brett. I'm going to try and pronounce his surname correctly. It's Brett Correa. Brett Correa is our champion, and he had another champion next to him, and that is Vanessa Wood. But with them, there was other team players as well. So they were really running at a phenomenal, abnormal race, and they got this right. Now you must remember, everybody has got their own jobs. Brett has his own work that he has to do, but he did UIM work as well because of the absolute desperation and passion, I suppose. That is the reason why they worked across the clock, 24/7 almost, and that is why we could have more than 1,000 wards that we are contesting. So it's not just, it's teamwork. It's just teamwork. The guys themselves, the ward candidates, they were pressed, they were pressurized, and sometimes the emotions ran high, but we had one goal, and that is to win. And winning for us, as Neil says, is to get our people on the posters, registered. And yes, we had a few challenges, and today it also came out that the IEC really didn't. We can write a book about that journey alone.
Yeah. No, I think we can write a book about the IEC, and I think that Deputy Chief Justice Moseneke's inquiry and investigation, from that point on, this is going to be a book that needs to be written next year and come out and talk about what really happened behind the scenes. Maybe I'll get some time in South Africa if we get rid of this PCR testing requirement and come over and do a little research and write this book. But Neil, let me put a few things out here. We had a nice comment here just a moment ago. Where did it go? My chat went up and said that, there you go. Kevin Johnson said, this dude has arrived at the right time and has the potential to create a movement. Well, based on what Neil shared with, if that's accurate information, sounds like a movement's already underway. The scientist asked a question, and let me take a stab at answering this one for Neil, and I'll give you a chance to go at it. But he says, will the UIM work with the DA? Well, before Neil answers that question, my expectation as an analyst would be that, well, Neil has said that they've already had success because they're trying to get people aware and alert and energized and bring people to a banner. That seems to be working for the UIM. And success beyond that is secondary is if they get anybody elected. Well, I mean, that's a very modest goal. If you say anybody elected, 5, 10, 100, 1,000, whatever you're going to get elected. But even if they got all 1,000 wards, that wouldn't put them in control of a lot of metros. So I'm going to guess that he's willing to work with other parties in a coalition. But I'll ask that question now. Would you be willing, or would you work with the DA, for instance, or any other parties, Neil?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, that was easy.
There are two that we will never work with.
I know who they are.
So when we say work with is a very clear understanding that I think politics is the same like marriage, quid pro quo.
Is that how marriage works? I must have figured that out wrong.
It's compromise, Chris. If you are open-minded, there's one thing me and you share, and I only realized that after our interview, I did what you and I do well. Mm-hmm. I go dig a bit. Mm-hmm. You and I are both military officers, retired. You and I are both combat officers, and you and I are both ex-intelligence officers in the military.
Yep.
I want people to quickly understand that concept. A military officer is grounded on specific planning, on an objective, and will do everything and anything, even sacrifice men, to reach such objective. I am an ex-military combat officer. I am running my party like a military strategy. Disciplined, focused, object-orientated, and I know in this objective I will lose men and women. But as an officer, I am willing to sacrifice this because I told my men and women, this is what we will have to do. And yet still, they come and stand. Now, my objective is not this year. It is 2024. My goal and operation is totally functional on the end game, not of local government, but 2024, to remove this government.
No, absolutely. Well,
and to do that, there's no doubt in today's South African politics, coalition government between a variant of small parties, including, yes, the DA, on condition that we agree on mutual principle, that we will work together, but only united between us and the DA, and like it or not, the good party, the IFP, we need to consolidate because the attack objective is to stifle the EFF from governing and removing the ANC in July 2024.
Well, that's an excellent decision, explanation, excuse me. And you make it pretty clear for everybody. The point here is your focus when you came into this was 2024. This event now, in some respects, is the cherry on the ice cream, if I could put it in that analogy. And if anything that comes out of this is that you've started your movement in a time when people are paying attention to politics because an election's coming up. So there's a benefit for you there. And if you get anybody elected, it'll be interesting. So that's pretty cool. Now, the importance of language, because people were really excited. Yesterday, Gareth Cliff was on my program and he used the word vituperative. And people are like, what's that? Never heard that word. And I always give a big word alert. So, but you said a word a moment ago, just to show the importance of language. You said compromise, and you were talking about working together, coming together and compromise and working. And I thought you were going to say compromised, which, I equate with the African National Congress, a compromised political party.
Can I give you a word?
Sure.
It is my word. I hope generations will use it. It is co-opetition.
Okay.
Sometimes in life, you have to cooperate with a competition. Co-opetition comes in when mutually we know that we are different, that we have a different segment of approach, but the objective is the same. So I am looking at co-opetition, and that is exactly where I am.
All right, that's that's a word I haven't heard before, but rappers make up words all the time, so I'll accept that.
And Donald Trump.
Well, yeah, Kofifa. Don't tweet at 3 a.m. Yeah, I've had a few typos of people's name. I think I put my a video up about when I first put up that Gareth Cliff was going to come on. It was like 2:30 in the morning when I put the headline in, and I typed Garth Cliff. I just because it's spell checked, I didn't even see it. So yeah, don't tweet at 3 a.m. That's important. But I'm going to switch to. There's a few things here. People are asking about that. If that's a lucky beam behind you, don't answer that yet. I'm not familiar with what they're talking about. But I do want to get back to Fatima here real quick. And I noticed here that there's some ladies who are popping in here. I assume they're ladies. Someone whose name is Denise. I assume that's a lady. But Denise Segal is here, and she says, "My hero's on here," and then together we will. I think that's the slogan you guys have, together we will. But let me ask this question, Fatima. What has been the response from women? Are women excited about this? Are women involved in this? Obviously, you're a woman, so I mean, I'm just asking because you're on the front lines, and as the vice president, you're probably seeing this better than anybody else. Neil is busy getting the message out, running from event to event, and he's probably seeing lots of faces, but I don't know if it registers. I know what that's like when you're out there seeing so many people. But for you, Fatima, are you seeing women interested in what's going on with UIM?
Well, let me put it this way. When Neil de Beer goes live, when the UIM goes live, the lionesses are there and they're watching. Anybody that dares to say anything negative about Neil de Beer, about Fatima Abdool, about the UIM, those claws come out and they are there. They are like, they protect this party like nobody's business. And I've also started a UIM Lions group, and the ladies there, and we're chatting. And today specifically, there was a lot of women saying we have to pray for Neil, we have to pray for the party. So yes, the women are on board, but I call them, Neil and I call us the aunties. The aunties here in South Africa, they are the ladies that are driving the community. And they are the ones that are there standing up for their children and the husbands and everybody. So yes, the women are on board. Actually, if we can compare the two, male and female, I would say that the females are actually more than the males. Well, we are more in any case. So yeah.
Well, that's fascinating to know because Anne-Marie Vessels has just subscribed. Thank you for Anne-Marie. As my zombie trots across the image of Fatima right there. Sorry about that if you see it afterwards. But it's interesting because, people, if you want to win people to your banner, your standard, you really have to understand who influences people. For instance, here in America, just to pick a particular community, I've lived in lots of communities, but my experience growing up is I lived in a housing project with black families, and women, grandmothers, aunts, mothers, but grandmothers in particular, had outsized influence on the behavior of kids growing up, and they would influence them, and they would inculcate values in them and interest in them. So I mean, when I grew up, most black folks around me were deeply religious. They were people of faith. Even if kids misbehave, they would be corrected by the grandmother, that sort of thing. But women can have a very big influence, not just as nurturers, but also as disciplinarians and also inculcating ideas. And that's why I asked the question, because if you're trying to grow your movement, women is a good approach. If you win women to your cause, they influence a lot more people. And I think that's the silent influence that society ignores. It really is there, but society really doesn't address it. Would you agree with that, Fatima, with my assessment?
Definitely. We are the drivers of our communities. We start driving from home. We manage our homes and then the communities. When you go to communities, you will see that it is women that are hosting certain things, initiating, because they have to do it for the sake of their children. And if I have to compare it, even when Jesus walked the earth, there were women that were there to serve. So we have different roles that we play, serving, protecting, leading, and so on. But it is important. And I like the way that the UIM sees women. We don't include women. What do you say, Neil? How do you always say that?
We don't count the women in the UIM. We make them count.
Ooh.
Yes.
Well, that's a good point because let me share with both of you one of the frustrations I have. So, for instance, this past week, Iceland had elections last Saturday, or Friday, Saturday, and the press rushed out, Iceland elects the first European majority female parliament, to which I said, yeah, and what's your point? Who cares? Are they qualified? Are they competent? You know, the ANC has crowed for years about gender equity while ignoring gender-based violence and the horrific rapes and things that happen in South Africa. And they're like, oh, we are equitable because half our members of parliament are women. I don't care. Only about 3 of them are actually competent at their jobs. The rest got their jobs for God knows what reason without disparaging those women. I'm not trying to do that. But the point is that who cares? I don't care. And when Helen Zille when she was the Western Cape Premier, she had an all-male cabinet. And disgusting, vile members of the ANC in Parliament called her a whore and a prostitute because she picked all males. And to which I said, what? I mean, you know, I understand people want, you know, balance and things, and I don't have a problem with that. But the bottom line in a society that's struggling to succeed is you got to get competent people. And if you don't have the right people of the right gender or right, you know, background, you got to get the best people can. And if Helen Zille thought that was the best cabinet she could have, I'm going to accept her because she was a brilliant mayor of Cape Town, without getting into Helen, you know, I'm just saying. So I'll accept that in the Western Cape. But the ANC is virtue signaling. They don't care about women, in my view. And the only time that they speak about gender-based violence is when the Women's League from the ANC puts pressure on them by protesting outside Parliament. And suddenly, you know, either that or Cyril Ramaphosa's got to distract attention from what they're doing with the National Coronavirus Command Council. So I like the way your guys' approach is. You're not adding women. Women are integral and a key part of what you're doing, Neil. That's what you're saying.
Absolutely.
This is called Latin. It's called the Intada Ready pod. That's
Okay.
the Latin Intada Ready.
Okay.
The common name is the sea beam. You'll find these pods on islands specifically next to water.
Okay.
But this is a symbol of growth, planting, and future sprouting of a nation too.
Okay.
And that is the correlation of women. Women bear the seed of the future generation, and they don't just bear it in their womb, they bear it in their soul. And Fatima wasn't chosen because she's a woman. She was chosen because she's a damn good leader.
Mm-hmm.
She understands the verbal contest of emotion. Now, someone asked me, what am I? Am I a liberal? Am I a conservative? What is the UIM? And I looked at this member of the media and I said, I'm a neoconservative.
Mm-hmm.
The guy said, excuse me? I said, I'm a neoconservative. What is a neoconservative? A neoconservative is a person that actually remembers, Chris, what we thought was old-time value.
Mm-hmm.
Respect, honor, courtesy, manners, ethics, loyalty. This is values that you and I got from our parents. Mm-hmm. This is values that, I'm sorry, in the military, I got it. I got what we used to call esprit de corps. Mm-hmm. And if we go and say these are conservative values, then set me up as a conservative ideology. But the neo-ideology, the neo-conservative is an entity that grows, that agrees that although we can hang on and bring and regurgitate old values, we are open in our mind as to bring in neo-values and modernize our concept. But old values will never go away. So I'm a neo-conservative.
Well, it's an interesting description because unfortunately that term fell on bad times here in the States during the Bush administration. So, but and they shortened it, said neocon, but I get exactly where you're coming from there. Listen, Neil, I want to ask you a question here from one of our viewers. Online Optics asked a very good question. This is, I think, a fantastic one to ask. Can I ask Neil, what was the decisive moment for him to shelve all his ties with the ANC and where he is now? But before you answer that, I did want to say that the things you talked about, morality, respect, discipline, honor, loyalty, the ANC has Loyalty. That's it. That's the only one they have. Loyalty to Luthuli House. The rest of that they've abandoned. But so the question was, what was the decisive moment for you to shelve all your ties to the ANC and be where you are now?
6.
Oh, wow.
18 December 2017, Johannesburg.
I know what's coming.
I sat at the conference of the ANC to elect a new president, either Cyril No Backbone Ramaphosa or the regurgitation of the Zuma clan. And I sat there with these two morons that were sitting there that have got less IQ than the Itoso Reid being. And I said to myself, we are back at the Lion King movie. We're about to hand over the Pride land to the hyenas. Because it was never about the political rhetoric that made me get up that night. It was the fundamental decision that I got up and said to an audience of the ANC that you're about to go and make two policies, the policies of the ANC, which you will then transfer to government. And if you do this, I told them, it will become the destruction of the economy of the Republic of South Africa. And I told them, but you won't get it because you're bloody communists. And I said to them the following: you are about to vote on land without compensation. And you're about to vote to nationalize the Reserve Bank. Shall you do any of the two? You can write off foreign direct investment to this country, and we will go, and I coined this phrase and now it's come true, you will go into what we will call an economic genocide in this country. And they said to me, we take your argument, but we have decided to do so, and that's when I left.
Well, I think that's a good reason to leave. You know, the whole issue of land is one I've written about extensively and had an article published on it. It's a very disingenuous argument from many respects. There was a pragmatic decision taken at CODESA, the Convention for Democratic South Africa, that land claims would only go back to 1910 because South Africa as a country didn't exist before then. And now people may not be thrilled by this, but the reality is that war is a legitimate form of political discourse. It's not an ideal one. Let's prefer to avoid it. But conquest is a legitimate form of political discourse. And any conquest that took place either by Bantu people coming south through the Rift Valley down over the Limpopo or by Europeans arriving in the Western Cape, that is the sands of history, which a lot of people don't want to hear, but that's true. I think it was a very pragmatic step. The legislation that discriminated against largely people of color started in 1913 with the Native Lands Act, and then when the National Party came in 1948, it got progressively worse, and those horrors. But there was a mechanism to deal with this. The ANC has not funded the land department responsible for this properly. They have not returned land, although they claimed he gave 8 million hectares of land to people. They're also misleading people. They say they want to put 1 million black South Africans on farms by 2030. Most of the world is going the other direction. People don't want to farm. It's being mechanized. Less people are farming, and it's becoming more productive. Most black South Africans that I know, and I know a fair number of them, not all, there's 43 million, but I know a fair number of them, but most just want a plot for a home, or they want, they want a place, especially in urban areas. Very few people want to become farmers. So the whole thing is disingenuous, but it really is frustrating to hear what has happened there. So I can understand why you would leave the party. And here's the thing, frankly, from my perspective, South Africa, which has $20 billion in annual trade with the United States and is a beneficiary of the Africa Growth and Opportunity Act, should not be in that act anymore, because the mere raising in Parliament of this, and now it's before Parliament, it probably fail, hopefully it will, but the mere putting of that before Parliament is an abrogation of the property rights clause that's part of the Africa Growth and Opportunity Act. South Africa is not respecting property rights by even introducing this. So my point here is that the $20 billion of duty-free trade should be suspended, which would be harmful to South. It won't affect us. We pay duty going that way, but you get free duty for your products coming in. So very frustrating. But let me. There's a question here, and I want to get to it. It's not going to be a tough one because Neil, you've been pretty open with answering these things, but it is. It's a sticky one, so I will do that. But before we get to it, let me ask this question, because Cedric Stevens, I'm gonna phrase it a little different than he asked it. Then I'll get back to Neil. I want to ask Fatima this. So Cedric Stevens says the following. This will give Neil a moment to think about it. Not that he needs a moment. He's pretty quick with the answers. But I just want to make sure Fatima gets a chance to answer here. But Graham Booth just become a member. Thank you for that. Cedric says, I'm still trying to get past the ex-SANDF and MK aspects here. I'm going to a way. Is this another EFF-like party or something else? I'm confused. Now, well, give Neil a moment to think about that. But Fatima, from your perspective, EFF, of course, was a bunch of angry, naughty children because Julius got kicked out of the ANC for his behavior, attacking Zuma. Isn't that ironic? And so they formed a party, and much like COPE, people took their toys and left the party. Tara Lakota took his toys and left when Thabo Mbeki was dumped, and when Julius was dumped, these people left, and they brought people with their banner. You're not coming from the ANC, except for Neil. I mean, I don't imagine most of your supporters are coming from there. So to help people, Fatima, how would you describe this? Neil described it as a movement, and then you've got political goals and objectives here down the road. It's not an EFF-like party, is it? Because Cedric seems a little bit confused. We'll let you get in, and then I'll get back to Neil, who looks like he's itching to answer that.
So I will be very quick. The irony about the EFF and Julius Malema, I've got a video clip which I'll send to you later, where he categorically says that he will never leave the ANC. He will never start his own party, and he will die an ANC member, which is a lie. There's a lot of statements that guy makes, and he just contradicts himself. The one thing that we don't do is contradict ourselves. We don't change our stories every corner. We are steadfast in our beliefs. We've got 5 things that that is the core of the party. But the one thing that we categorically always say is that Neil and I and most of our leaders are, first of all, believers in Christ. That is important to us, that people must know that. So never must anybody ever equate us to communism or military type of party, etc., etc. The values that we have are biblically based or Christian based, but we are accommodative of all other religions. So that is the one thing that sets us apart. And we are an inclusive in terms of race, in terms of, anything else, cultures, and so forth, and so forth. So we are definitely, you can't even compare us to any party that exists at the moment. I don't come from any party. I only became aware. I was very politically inclined, but I moved more as an activist, speaking out and just voicing my opinion about what is happening in politics. But now I'm finding myself in a political party that absolutely suits me like a shoe or like a glove because of the ideologies and the values that we stand for. And that is very, very important for everybody that joins.
No, I think
one thing that we don't...
Sorry. Sorry, I thought you finished.
The people that we don't accommodate are racists.
Yeah.
Racists, we will not ever accommodate people that discriminate against any other person. That is an absolute no-no for us.
Well, that's brilliant. I'm very happy to hear the last part. And I assume that was the case. You can't assume that with the ANC anymore. It talks about non-racial society, and then they pass legislation that discriminates against minorities, and then they continue to blame minorities for their failures when the failures are largely their own. But Neil, before you answer, Online Optics just phrased this in a very good way. And before I go give you a chance to answer, so last time when you were here with us shortly, I raised a question about your past in the ANC, your connections, and how you've succeeded in business, and then also the MK angle as well. And because a lot of people raise this up, and this is not my statement, I'm just putting this out there, and I'm going to give you what Online Optics says. A lot of people ask the question, well, can we trust Neil de Beer? Is he changed his colors? Is he a chameleon? Now, Online Optics says the following. This, and I think is good, leads back to you answering the question you're going to answer. It says, if Neil wants people to follow his movement, he needs to tell his story and explain to people where he's coming from, as there's mistrust from his previous ANC affiliations. And I think that Online Optics has framed that very well. And you need to know this. I don't know if you saw the stream because you're very busy, but last time I asked a question, not quite like that, but along those lines. And Fatima did a brilliant job explaining it, but not everyone was here. So here's a chance for you, Neil, to tell your story, to explain to people a little bit about your past. There's obviously reasons why you joined MK. And you felt compelled to do it, and there's obviously reasons why you left the ANC. I heard you just explain why you left the ANC, and I buy that. I buy that for $1 or $10. I like that. But if you give us a chance to tell us a little bit about your story, Neil, because I think a lot of people people out there, whoops, sorry about that. I'm trying to get Neil up there. A lot of people out there might be a little bit skeptical, and I think it's fair enough to ask the question, and I know you're ready to answer it. So go ahead.
Right behind you is a picture of Cape Town.
Mm-hmm.
And in the far back beyond fold of that picture is an island.
Robben Island.
When you look at that, is the beginning of Neil de Beer's story. When you, in my country, grow up as a boy, in 1986, I was at school. In 1986, I was 17 years old. In 1987, I was at war. I mean, this is vital for the people to understand that when I was a young man, I went to war at 18. We didn't have a choice. You either went to university or you got into a uniform or you went to jail. I was absolutely a follower of the apartheid government. I drank the apartheid system's propaganda like fresh, cold lemonade. I believed that the communist, that the red death, ons het gesê die rooi gevaar, would come and take away our country. I, like thousands of young men, gave up my youth. Thousands got into brown uniforms, picked up a gun, and fought in Angola. At 18, on my 18th birthday, I had my 4th combat mission. At 19, I was a revered soldier. I was then 2 years already in the army. At 20, I got recruited by the security police, then of the apartheid government, which you can relate to the Gestapo of the Nazis. We had the Gestapo here. They were called the security police. And I'll never forget leaving the army thinking I would now go into a career and getting the knock on the door of a grey man with a brown file who found me at my mom's home, where I stayed because I just left the army, and a good place to go back is your mom's cooking. And there this lonely man was standing and he said, I'm looking for Neil de Beer. And he came in my house and he sat down. His name was Andy Miller. And he was the security agent of the security police for the Western Cape. And he said to me, you have a talent and we know you. Would you come work for us? At 20 years old, I became an agent of the security police of this government. My job? Torture. My job? Interrogation. My job? Infiltration. Of whom? At that stage, the ANC. At that stage, the terrorists and the terror cells that were growing in the Western Cape, fighting the apartheid government. No human being, Chris, goes from a white Afrikaner farmer boy who fought for king and country and then becomes himself a terrorist. Logic should tell you something happened. Something earth-shattering must have happened in my life. And that is what happened. I had a huge shift in mindset one night. Now, the book is out. Our book is out. It's called Undercover with Mandela, a Spy. I am in the book. My blood brother, Brad Stein, who, by the way, stayed in America for 18 years in California. He has just returned 2 weeks ago and has come back home. He's the author. And it says in this book, my total struggle history, from apartheid to Mandela. But what happened was I was sitting in a scenario interrogating a man for country, flag, and this man just looked at me, knowing what his destiny was that day. And still he looked at me. Let's call him Kumalu. And he said to me, I know whom you are. Your reputation precedes yourself. He said, but whatever happens to me tonight, young man, are you prepared to kill another million? And another million? Because you are fighting not a war. You are fighting the people that want freedom. And I got ice cold that night. Because we didn't know. We were in a trench, Chris. People went to fight in Iraq. They went to go fight in Afghanistan. And they questioned no one. They got in a uniform, they got in an aircraft, and they went to go fight the Taliban. They went to go fight an enemy. They had no political rhetoric, but the objective to kill prime evil, to go find weapons of non-existing mass destruction. No one questioned that. You fought for the United States of America. So did I. But at a point, if you are an inquisitive mind like mine, that does not just accept the absolute bullshit that people rumble into your IQ. I ask this question, which no people should ask if they're in a system, and that is, why? Why are we doing this? Now, Chris, you know, in a system of military, that's a bad thing to do. Why? But why are we killing them? Why are we murdering them? Why are we persecuting them? And no one, after this man planted the seed in my mind, could answer me. And then I knew something is amiss. Something's wrong. Because if you instruct me to do this and you cannot answer why, and you tell me because I say so. No, Chris. It doesn't work that way. And that changed my journey to go explore as an intellectual, although being an officer, the why. And I grew intensely oblivious that the shackles were coming off my eyes. Apartheid was not a justified system, no matter how you then try to sell it. And as a human being, as a person with a mind that can be changed, I walked over. Because that man that came from that island called Nelson Rolihlahla Madiba Mandela came from that island and did not speak war. He spoke reconciliation. And I heard it, I understood it, and I knew that if we were going to set him free, unban the ANC, and eventually they would become government. Here's an interesting fact, and sorry, this is my explanation. What white people did Nelson Mandela actually interact with? What white people would he ask, would he speak to, would his people interact with when they take over as government? And I'll tell you what, when I joined, many a night after being an ANC intelligence operative, we had discussions between black and white. And remember, I was the white guy. I was sitting in a black regime, a black struggle, but they would ask me, tell me, Neil, is it true that white people do this? Neil, is it true that this is the way they think? And by getting into the system in a small, in a small way, I could change also the mindset that when we become an ANC government, revenge, Nuremberg, should not be the way. But reconciliation should be the path. And in a small way, I think, making that change, although many will say, treason, verraaier, they would never know the discussions I had actually in favor of the white population of this country surviving. That's my story. That's where I was. And today, I am sad that this ANC, this great liberator of humankind, have now started to become an oppressive government, which I was part of. But again, Chris, here I go again. I am not going to be part of it. And now again, my second struggle against my previous family has begun.
Well, I think that's well stated, and thank you for sharing that story, Neil. I have to say that we probably agree, but what you just said, I would frame the last part a little bit differently. I would say that the ANC hasn't begun to become the party of oppression. It has certainly been that way for the past decade at a minimum. I think that when I'm not a fan of Thabo Mbeki. I think he's a small-minded person who has a very fragile ego, and over 500,000 South Africans are dead from HIV who were needlessly born with it. But that's a personal view from Neverapine. But that's not to say he wasn't a bad president. I'm just saying that I had issues with that particular thing with him. But after Thabo Mbeki, what I call the Polokwane massacre, I think the only person who calls it the Polokwane massacre, when he was booted out as president of the ANC, that party, the ANC, shifted not long after that. The state capture stuff became more entrenched. We went from petty corruption to pervasive corruption. We went to people assassinating their own party members in KZN just so they become ward councillors, to become tenderpreneurs and get their hands on the contracts to hand money out to the tenderpreneurs. And the oppressiveness, it affects all South Africans. It's not just whites and coloreds and Indians who suffer. I mean, when you punish tourism firms with money come from private donations, which is really egregious, and also from taxation for the Tourism Relief Fund, and only give it to people based on their skin pigmentation, and then black tourism-related companies. The tourism companies are owned by coloreds, Indians, and whites, employ tens and hundreds of thousands of black South Africans. So punishing them harms, it's just stupid. This party is a disgrace to the liberation struggle. Whether you were in favor of the apartheid regime or you were against the apartheid regime, in favor of liberation, it doesn't matter. Looking at the ANC today objectively, they are an absolute disgrace to the liberation struggle, and they're shameful. They've tried to co-opt history. Every time you turn around, they try to consolidate power like most political parties do by combining municipalities, reducing other town councils so that people don't get political experience. Just one big one. We're overwhelmed. Everything they do, they try to rewrite history as if the ANC was the sole part of liberation. Now, I know you were with the ANC, but the Pan-African Congress, the Black Sash movement, Helen Suzman, so many people contributed to the liberation struggle, domestically and outside it. But if you go to the Apartheid Museum in Gold Reef City, it's all ANC. It's all ANC. They even try to claim the Black Consciousness movement. Steve Biko was not. That was Steve Biko. That was at the university. So as you can see, I'm very angry with the ANC, as I suspect you are at this point too. And it's just very frustrating. This is what happens. But anyway,
can I add something?
Please, because I'm on a mini rant. So please interrupt me.
No. You're passionate, and my vice president will tell you how my live on Facebook went this morning. Can I tell you something that's interesting about the ANC?
Please.
And very few people know it. But when I tell you now this, you're going to go, aha. Mm. Chris, of the 92 members of the NEC, of the ANC, all of them are communists.
Yeah, every single one of them. Members of the South African Communist Party, card carrying.
They are communists. Now, if you phantom that understanding that they are communists, in other words, when we got told how to pick up an AK-47 in the day, how to handle a Makarov or a Tokarev, the trade-off from Russia, China, and Cuba, because those are the countries that help the ANC, not Western. No. The West did not help the ANC. It was Gaddafi. It was China. It was Cuba, Fidel Castro. They were all communists. So the trade-off we had at night, being given the ammunition to fight in the day, was Stalin, was Mao Zedong, was Lenin. It was the choreographed ideology of communism you had to use as a mantra at night. So when we came back from liberation, we entered a democratic, capitalistic country as communists. Now, the government of this country are communists, trying for 27 years to manage a capitalistic entity. It cannot. So I'm sorry, the new generation will not be. But Cyril comes from the Union of Mine Workers. Gwede Mantashe, chairman of the ANC, Union. Jesse Duarte, Union.
Yep.
Paul Mashatile, communist. Blazing Zamande,
Communist.
chairman. Do you start getting the rank? Didi Mabuza, communist. Now, how do you think when you sit with a communistic system in your brain, are you going to manage a capitalist country? It's impossible. It's oil and water that can live in a barrel together, but never mix. That's the problem in the current entity. They are 92 people, Chris, and according to social communistic principle, they must all agree. In a capitalistic country, one man must make a decision. You cannot have a military junta or a social communistic junta, 92 people on consensus to run a capitalistic country. I'm sorry, that's the truth. And whilst the ANC is in a tripartite agreement with the SACP and the Kusatu Union, how the hell do you think we're going to survive? Put it out there. Tell them that. No, I'm sorry. It's not their fault. If Britain, Germany, America harbored us, maybe different thinking would come. But not one of the 92 NEC members currently has run a spaza shop or a takeaway. And then they said Cyril's the hope because Cyril is a businessman. What a lot of rubbish. Utter bullshit.
He's a patronage puppy. That's what he is.
Rubbish. No, call a spade, not an agricultural implement. This president can't manage a McDonald's takeaway, man. And it's not insulting.
It's a fact.
This man is in charge of 1.36 billion rand budget a year, and his ANC stole 2 trillion. Chris, they stole the South African fiscal budget of a year in 24 months.
Yep. No, I'm with you. It's listen. When Rama, no, it's quite all right. I'm going to get to Fatima and ask about the campaign here in a second. She was taking care of her data, I think, there. But before I do, when Ramaphosa and NDZ and Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma, these two, I think, probably two of the worst possible candidates to become the head of the ANC in December of 2017, when that vote was held and Ramaphosa wins by a mere 70 or so votes. So if 35 people voted the other way, we'd have NDZ as the president. But when that happened, I was fair, and I said, if Cyril Ramaphosa is serious, and I have my reservations. I mean, he has been the deputy president. He was on the board of Implats, I think it was, that was responsible for a role at Marikana. I said, I'm skeptical, but if he's serious, he has a narrow window to go after corruption and to make a change in South Africa. He's serious. He has a real chance. But then what does he do? Because he's so weak, he doesn't have control of the party. He brings all these Zuma clowns in to be in his cabinet. He fills his cabinet full of Zuma lackeys. And that set the stage. And here we are, 3.5 years later. What senior ANC official has been charged, prosecuted, convicted, and imprisoned for corruption? Zero. And every day we turn up another case of corruption, misuse of government funds. It's off the charts unbelievable. But let me get to Fatima. I want to shift here a little bit second. So Fatima, I think her phone is frozen. That's it looks like she's napping, but she's not. Fatima, are you there? We lost her for a second. Here she's there. Okay, there you go. There's her smile back. We got her back. Yeah, no, and I was going to say she's not taking a nap. So how is the campaign going on the ground for you guys? Because again, this wasn't a vision to be a political campaign in 2021, but you guys have been jazzed up. You're moving on. You're out on the ground. You've got 1,000 people standing in wards around the country. How are events going? Are you seeing good crowds? Are you getting a response? And is the movement gaining steam, do you think, from your perspective, Fatima?
Yes, it is. Definitely. I just want to backtrack one bit regarding Neil's story.
Yes.
When I actually read the book because I had to make a decision whether I want to join the UIM or not. And after reading the book, I knew that this man is principled. His vision is steadfast in one direction, and that is to free South Africa from whatever is happening right now. And that's the reason why I'm part of the UIM. Cyril Ramaphosa is a disappointment, and we have to work our butts off to get him and his cronies out of the seats. That is why we are working out of, there isn't a specific pattern that we follow. We go where the people call us, and people do call us. Every single day, they want to know more about the UIM, and we go and we talk to them, and they have invited people, and those people want to join the UIM, and then we start branches. Neil is planting branches like he is, I don't know, branches are coming out of his head. Here in Gauteng, the pace is a bit slower than the Western Cape, but we are also moving every day, taking it in our strides, initiating gatherings and just little events to spread the word physically and engage with people. So we don't, and we do the door-to-door thing as well, giving out pamphlets, explaining and talking and, just doing stuff that we've never done before and doing it the way that we are led, according to the UIM vision and mission, and what we say on social media is what we say when we meet people face to face. I can't hear you.
Sorry, thanks. Yeah, I try not to cough or something like that or sneeze when she was talking and get the feedback. So I was also taking care of some stuff in the chat while you were sharing. But thanks for giving us an update on what's going on. Also, it's good for people to know that you guys are geographically separated. You're focusing down the Western Cape and getting around the country, Neil, and she's up in Gauteng, which is the most populous and wealthiest industrious part of the country, which is where you really want to get some support up there. So that's pretty good. We've had a few nice comments come in. Some of them aren't nice, not directed at you guys, but Smee again gave a super chat and he said, Rama, I'll just use my Ramaphosa. That's what I'll use rather than what he wrote there in Afrikaans. But Ramaphosa and cronies can't even run a bath without messing up. I think that's true. And then Lynn put something here, says, wonderful to see fresh blood. There's some. And then Denise Segal, she said, now when she says this, I think of Kurt Darren and I start singing Kalfat Soki in my head, but she says, Soki, Cyril, and Friki Malame are done. Sorry.
Denise is a lioness.
I just when she says Soki Cyril, I'm thinking I got pictures of Kurt Darren dancing to Kalfat Soki. Sorry, I can't help that. That's just funny. But anyway, a little lighthearted moment there. But then there's Pet Zoo Film Crew said, so the moral of the story is Rui Chava became true. No. I guess it did if you look at it that way. But the Rui Chava, of course, was the arrival of communism coming down the continent inside the cordon sanitaire. And it was a threat that the National Party used to frighten its population, its white population that had voting rights for a long time. There were two dual threats. There was the Swart Chava, Afrikaans Swart Chava, and then there was the Rui Chava, which was the red threat from communism.
That's right.
Well, thank you. Yeah, so those two threats. But here's the thing, and this has been my thesis for decades as I watch this unfold as an intelligence analyst and of course, having access to things behind the scenes, which most people don't know. But the justification the National Party had for staying in power after Soweto in 1976 before that, they talked about the communist threat, and there was the threat of the black threat. But after 76 and the uprisings, the concept of presenting to the white population, you're all going to be murdered and chased into the seas and raped if blacks take over this country, and they can never rule. That was the black threat. That worked for some folks until the late 80s. But by the late 80s, a lot of people were becoming more astute and better informed. Like, they weren't buying into that story anymore. When the red threat of communism collapsed with the fall of the Berlin Wall and the Soviet Union shortly after that collapse, the main reason that they stayed in power disappeared. They couldn't convince the white population anymore that they had to stay in power and protect them from the communists because the communists had been defeated. But I think what was said here by my viewer was saying that, well, I guess the communists have won with the ANC because they're all communists today. And maybe that's a fair point. We've come back to communists. But those two, that's the reason why apartheid ended. Not because the leaders in the DA had good hearts. Some of them might have, but they didn't end it because they cared. They ended it because they realized the handwriting was on the wall. If we can't sell the red threat to stay in power, because after 78, basically the government of South Africa wasn't run by the parliament. It wasn't run by the legislature. It was run by the security state, the police, the intelligence services, the office of the presidency, and the South African Defense Force. They ran that country. The rest of it was rubber stamp. Did I get anything wrong, Neil?
Chris, they ran out of money.
Well, that
No,
too.
they ran out of money.
Yeah, that too.
To keep the defense force of this country cost $1 million a day.
Yeah.
Sure.
They ran out of money because and I know this, we were put under severe sanctions in the late 80s.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm going to tell you something that's interesting. Why do you think the ANC vehemently detests Israel? I'll tell you why. Let me tell you why. Because I was part of it. An horrific consequence for my statement I made last week, Wednesday, on a Jewish radio station called Chai FM, when I said, it is time to now speak to Israel again as South Africa. Oh, what an atom bomb in my country that I could say that. And I'll tell you what. The African National Congress has always been a part of the Palestinian struggle. Nelson Mandela had a massive affinity for Yasser Arafat. And the PLO was one of the biggest financial fiscal supporters and training groups of the ANC, MK. He also got invited as one of the first presidents to address Parliament in the Democratic Republic. Yasser Arafat came here and we met him. But what was the accusation, and I think this is clear, was that the Israeli government was assisting the apartheid government financially and economically. Now, funny enough, the Israeli machine gun, the Galil, that was now the current R4 rifle that the SANDF used. And that was wrong. Because what ANC was saying is you got killed because you were Jews in 1942. How can you aid and abet a country that kills blacks because they're blacks? Does that make logical sense that when you went through your struggle in the 40s, that you would now aid and abet an apartheid regime that's doing the same thing? That was the discussion. That was the debate. What has intensed this debate is obviously the situation between Israel and Palestine and the call that it is now racism and a new form of apartheid. But what I'm saying, and it is a reflection, Chris, on the past, we cannot live in the past, man. There must come a time where we as a country, and Fatima will support me, we had the TRC, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, which was an alternative to Nuremberg. It was an alternative to trials about the apartheid people that led it to send them to jail or to death. Mandela demanded a reconciliation commission. And here's a fundamental statement Chris will make. We never got to reconciliation in this country. We got to the truth. We got the truth where mothers would sit in a court and hear the man that killed their son say how he killed her. Both sides, ANC side and security police, where the mother sits and finally hears how the security policeman strangled her son, Sipho, shot him in the head and buried him in a field. That mother sat in that court hearing that. The white family, also in court, hearing how an ANC operative blew up a restaurant with her daughter in it, now meets the man who did it, who pushed the button. Now let's talk about these two dynamics, the African black family and the white family. Both lost someone in an horrific manner, and never did they know how. Now the truth comes out. So can you imagine Chris going home, having seen the man that did it, but the knock on the door afterwards to come and say, okay, you have now heard the truth. Would you like to meet this person? And would you like to forgive? Would you like to reconcile so that you can? It never happened. And 27 years later, in a white home and in a black home, that hurt has never gone away. Yep. Now, that's an important topic now in this country, because we are now more racially divided because of Julius Frikkie Malema. I call him Frikkie. And because of people like Suki. Now, Suki is not Soki. Soki is the dance. Yep. Suki is the Afrikaans word for seeking. I call him Suki Cyril because I'm looking for him. I can't find him around us. He's nærens. He's nowhere.
He disappeared during Corona. He was in his house for weeks on end there.
Well, he did come on TV one night with a bit of porridge stuck to his mouth. He had to eat it quickly. Now, I'm not here to knock him. It's easy to knock someone in hindsight. It's easy to say bad. Now, we've taken a disciplined methodology in the UIM. Chris, if the toilet is broken, it's broken. Mm-hmm. No political picture, and I see this is now the attitude of this interpolitical campaign of people. They're taking pictures and they're putting it on media and saying, here's a pothole. Yeah. It's the ANC. Here's a broken toilet. This is the scandalous kind of politics that we are sitting, and it is regurgitating me. The UIM will do three things and then I'll hand this back. We will become the party of accountability. Hear me well. We will sit in council and we will keep these political parties accountable for everything they have said, promised, and said they would deliver. Number two, we will demand implementation in services. Implementation. And finally, Chris, we will do audits. So in other words, we will do reconciliation of the process of implementation and accountability. Just those three things is what the UIM is going to do. And it's not done. It's a fresh approach. And that's exactly what did the EFF call us? A non-entity that has a romance to become politicians.
Well, it's interesting that the EFF calls you that, because the EFF platform is full of BS. Of their 8 or 9 positions, 7 of them are things that are not municipal competencies. They're at the national level. We're going to redistribute land. We're going to do this. We're going to do taxing. You don't have any control over that. So you're running for municipal positions and you're hoodwinking the rubes who are going to vote for you, who aren't articulate enough or well-educated enough to be able to think critically. Wait a second. How are you going to redistribute land? You don't control land. It's not a local competency. How are you going to change my rate of taxation? That's done by the national government. And the ANC is doing the same thing. We know, to quote Cyril, we know we haven't always picked the right people. We haven't always fixed the corruption. But we've had an epiphany this week after 27 years and being forced to hold an election that we desperately tried to stop from happening because you're not going to vote for us. We understand you're angry at service delivery. And so Oh, God, stop. It's just
Chris, you
ridiculous.
do a good Cyril.
Yeah, well, it's no credibility. It's no credibility whatsoever. Listen, Fatima, before we wrap up, we're going to wrap up here shortly, but some people are asking, who is this Fatima? I think that South Africans should be ashamed of themselves they never heard of you. You are a famous actress, are you not? That's my term, famous. I believe you were on a soapie at one time, weren't you?
I don't know if I'm famous, but yes, I am. I see myself just as a community worker. I call myself an activist. So, yeah, my passion started with community work here, teaching children drama, expressing themselves, and then I did eventually started acting in different soapies. The last one I did was in December. I was on Scandal. But my heart and my passion for my people is much stronger. I would rather go knock door to door, engage with people, give mothers diapers and milk formula and clothes for their children than to be on TV and be famous. But yeah, at some stage I did do some acting. I am still, working with young children in creative ways and so on. And last week I had a stage production. I've shifted to the seat of producer and director and so on. So yeah. So Nicklin, I will soon do a two-hander.
Did someone say Oscar? Did someone say Fatima and Oscar? What?
No, but if you're doing production, you get someone to write. You might want to do a documentary at some point. That might be an interesting approach for you as a producer and director. But yeah, no, it's. I thought someone asked that question a little bit ago, and they hadn't heard of you, so I thought we should bring that up. But here's a serious question. Beyond all that, very quickly, Neil, does the UIM have a position? This was asked a bit earlier, and a lot of people are chatting. I can't get to all the comments, but this one I grabbed earlier. It's a fair question, I think. We've experienced now not 474 days of lockdown, which Cyril said when he addressed the nation the other day or last night. Not 474, as he said last night, but about 560 plus days of lockdown since 27 March of 2020. Cyril's math is a little bit off, or his iPad had a glitch in it when he was reading from the teleprompter. One of the two. But does the UIM have a position regarding lockdown and where we should go from here? Is it something you've articulated or something you've thought about?
Chris, in 1 hour from now, after being awake now for 16 hours, I will be getting out of this clothes. I will be putting on a uniform. I will be putting on my bulletproof. I will be commanding a special force unit tonight against crime until 2 o'clock tomorrow morning, like I've now been doing for 2 years. We have a harrowing night in front of us. We will be serving more than 12 warrants of arrest in assistance to the police. We have to start thinking about community leadership. I am a leader. So in the day I'm a politician, at night, I am still active fighting crime. The UIM, 2 years now, not UIM Neil de Beer, started a community reaction unit to protect our people. And I can categorically testify today that there was never a lockdown in the informal settlements of this country. Let's be clear.
Truth.
Lockdown was for the rich. Lockdown was for the wealthier areas. And I can tell you from physical experience why, Chris, for a while, I was the acting volunteer disaster management head of my city. Yeah. So for 3 months, every night of my life, I had to go. And you know what we saw? No, it's crazy. In the so-called majority white upper class area, no one was on the street. I am talking ghost town. And you would drive one road and you would be in, can I call it, the wrong side of the train track, and it's a party. There's no mask, there's alcohol, there's no lockdown. This is a fact. Now, I look as if I am in a parody of another planet. Because when I see Suki Cyril and the people saying we are going from level 5 to 4 to 3 to 1, I'm going, what planet are you on? Because there's no lockdown in one area, and in the other, there's total lockdown. So when this president last night takes us to level 1,
Wow.
and he's so proud of himself that he can now announce that we can have 2,000 people outside. I looked at this and I went, am I the only person that thinks this man is a moron? Because if he can let 2,000
no, you're
people
not.
outside, he might as well 5,000. What's the difference, Chris, between two? And then he says, no, but we will have social distancing and masks.
No. It's not a mask. It's a mosque. It's a mosque. He's confusing it with that place of worship.
Here comes the famous Neil de Beer signal. Here it comes. Are you ready for it?
Go ahead.
It has now become global. Here it is. Give this man an ice cream. I mean, Chris. Sorry, I don't know if the word bullshit is allowed.
Yeah, it's allowed. It's fine.
You can bullshit some of the people some of the time. But you cannot bullshit all the people all of the time.
Yeah. Well, Neil, we got to make a very good point. You pointed out there, and this is the reality for the world. You got to understand. I've talked about this the whole time. They initially tried to do these lockdowns in townships. They sent SANDF and they sent SAPs in there, and they killed 12 black South Africans, including Collins Kosa. Say his name, Collins Kosa. They've all forgotten about Collins Kosa. I have not. The SANDF was cleared of the charge of his murder. He was murdered. He was beaten to death it was in Alexandria, I think it was, yeah. But so once they killed a dozen black South Africans and the press was all over it, whoa! Suddenly, SAPs and the SANDF are out of the townships, and the virus circulates like nobody's business. We get a new Delta, or not Delta, but a different variant that comes out of there, and they failed South Africans. Meanwhile, criminalizing 230,000 South Africans for walking on a beach, for surfing, for stepping in the yard, for nursing an infant, and of course, the majority of those people were white and colored, and almost exclusively in the Western Cape. Very bizarre situation here. And they're proud of it. Becca Chile, the gangster in chief himself, goes out and says, yeah, we've arrested 230,000 people. I'm so proud of myself. While he's harassing foreign tourists on a beach, while people in townships in Kaisheta and in Alexandria just walk around doing their own thing. Nobody's business. Total hypocrisy with this party. They are corrupt and they need to go. Go ahead.
Can I just say something?
Yes.
I was on a film set today, and young people were just chit-chatting there in the corner. And they said the following. They said, yeah, the president put us on level 1 now. Does he think we are stupid? We know he is doing it because elections is around the corner.
Exactly. That's all it is. That's all it is.
And his government thinks we are a bunch of... He's undermining the intelligence of the average South African, thinking that he can just say whatever he wants and just do whatever he wants, that we won't see right through what the hidden agenda is. Because the ANC has been rallying, the EFF has been rallying, having more than 5,000 people, and 600 people or more were marching against the lockdowns, against the mandatory jabbing. Now there's cases built against them.
That's C point. Yes, I covered that. I point out the hypocrisy of, the SABC and News 24. News 24 and SABC rushed to put stories online and in print within 24 hours of the C Point Worldwide Rally for Democracy and Freedom recently, in which they magically said, 600 people, a case has been filed. 5,000 EFF members show up in Pretoria and threaten domestic terrorism against the government if they don't adopt the Chinese and Russian vaccines. And we are going to make this country ungovernable. Almost nobody wearing a mask, nobody standing apart, 5,000 people, not a single mention of it. And the lockdown standard was 100 at the time. And then, of course, we see over 3,000 people at least show up at Church Square in violation of the 500 people standard, which just got changed in 2000 for the ANC's launch. The EFF has thousands more. We see the EFF in Phoenix with 5,000 people at illegal march. The list goes on and on and on of the hypocrisy. It's absolutely ridiculous. You're right, Fatima. Go ahead, Neil.
We have an amazing COVID thing in this country.
What's that? It disappears?
We are being told that at 12:10 on the 8th of December, the fourth wave is hitting us. God knows how they know this. It is like a cloud. Now, sorry, I'm in a circus here.
Well, I can, but see, Neil, I can answer. I can answer that question for you. I can answer that question for you. You see, they've consulted their scientists. They've gone to traditional healers and sangomas, and they roll the bones, and that's how they come up with the answer. That's how the ANC makes science.
Can I tell you? Sorry.
Go ahead.
We have curfew here. We have curfew. We have police curfew in this country. Now, let me explain. When we went to level 1 last night, the curfew is now 12 o'clock at night until 4 o'clock tomorrow morning.
Correct.
You've got to be in home.
Yep.
You might not be outside unless you are part of an essential service. Now, I'm asking you, as a person, not intellectually, but logically, logica, does this mean that at 12 at night, COVID comes? And then at 4 o'clock, COVID goes to bed?
No, the thing, and I get where you're going with this, but and we've got to cut short here in just a moment. So, what they should tell people is that the logic behind it, if they want to follow it, is that they don't want people in close proximity in shebeens, in clubs, and nightclubs and things like that. So, if they're already closed anyway, so why have a curfew? People let them go back to business.
Come with me tonight in uniform, and then I'll show you a shebeen that is open at 2 in the morning.
Of course it is.
3,000 people.
It's all bullshit, as you
said.
say.
You tell me, is this nuts? But I'll end off by telling you this, Chris. The United States of America has always been a friend of us.
Of
the
South
people
Africa.
Of the United States, yes, they
Okay,
have.
okay.
The United States of America has had an affinity with us, the South Africans, for a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
Someone said to me, Neil, why are you not in the media? Why are you not getting airtime? Why are you not being interviewed? Why is the UIM not showcased primarily like the others? I'll tell you why. Because you have a leadership that has chosen the truth. You have a leadership that has taken now an oath not to lie. You have a leadership that will rise for the people. There is a clear campaign not to have Neil de Beer, the ex-spy, on television, in media, because they are very scared of the UIM.
Yes.
Justice, no matter how they throttle our money, no matter how they put us down, the truth shall set you free, Chris. And this is the change of an era in this country headed up by two normal people. And I'll leave you with this. Can you imagine, Chris, 30 years ago, Fatima and Neil de Beer could not sit in one house together.
Yep.
30 years ago, we would have been arrested.
Yep.
Yeah.
This is not a long time ago. This is what we need to get back to each other. This country has hope. This country needs the United States of America. Chris, you are a great lover of my country. You speak of passion and you get mad because you love us. And I know that. And that I will put on record today means more to me than any money or any stature, is that people like you, who I know, ask the hard questions, because you don't spare the wrath for me. You ask it and you get the answer back. But I'll tell you something. I will fight with all means necessary that my children and my children's children can grow up in my land, because this country is worth it. This country has bled And I want to one day look at my child and say, your dad, your mom stood up when it was necessary. And I ask you, do not stop. Tell the people of the United States that we need the truth and nothing else but the truth. So help us God.
Well, thank you, Neil. I appreciate that. Great words to end on. I do have to do one housekeeping thing before I leave with you folks, is that Anna Marie Nell, who's the person who first asked me to get you as a guest on the program last year, and she reached out to you on Twitter and you responded and said yes. And then we had difficulty scheduling for lots of reasons and eventually got you on the program a month ago and now got you back on again. So I owe this to Anna Marie. She used her milestone super chat, which is a free one, to ask the question. I didn't get a chance to get back to it, but she did ask the question again. And Anna Marie, I didn't neglect you. I didn't forget you. Thank you for reminding me in the text. She asked, she said, and I don't know this person. She said, is Mr. Johan Rousseau still part of the UIM? I don't know who that person is. Is that a person affiliated with UIM, Johan Rousseau?
He was, but unfortunately, a stooge and was vehemently removed from us in the beginning. So
okay, I don't even know who that person is. So that's, Anne Marie, that answers your question. He's no longer with the UIM. Fatima, any last closing words? Neil, I'm not going to come back to your closing words because that was kind of moving. So, Fatima, anything you want to say to wrap up here before we close it for today?
I'm honored. Every day I thank God that I am honored to be where I am, doing what I'm doing. Every day I wake up with purpose. And like Neil said, when I die one day, on my tombstone, they should actually write, she did what she could, but she did something. All we want to do is something to bring change and hope to our children and their children. That's it. That's it.
Well, those are great words. Thank you once again. Now, listen, I think that somebody has to do something before the ANC drives the entire country off a cliff. It's rapidly approaching that point. They've pilfered, they've stolen, they've perverted, they've racialized. The irony is that the ANC today looks very much like the mirror opposite in the very same way as the National Party. They love state-owned enterprises. They love to bifurcate people on race. They love to take care of their privileged patronage network. The difference between the ANC and the National Party is pretty much that the National Party, the privileged patronage people were mostly white Afrikaans-speaking South Africans, whereas with the ANC, it's whoever fits into their loyalty to Lutuli House. And that's really where we're at today at a crossroads in 2021. South Africa cannot go SouthAfrica. It's time. November 1st is your opportunity to go out and vote. And whoever you vote for, as long as it's not the economic freedom fighters and the African National Congress, you raise at least the prospect of hope for South Africa as opposition parties hope to unseat the ANC and the metros and prove to South Africans that you can be transparent, responsive to citizens, honest, and deal with corruption and show that you care about South Africans. Service before self. It's been lost on the ANC. They are a RICO operation. Those are my words. You can attribute them to me. They're a criminal enterprise, not a legitimate ruling party. The number of people that really care about South Africa in the ANC has dwindled to a very small faction, and it's such a sad legacy for a party that did something useful during the liberation movement. And that's my final words. Neil de Beer, Fatima Abdool, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate your time and your words, and also for answering the tough questions and the easy ones. Those are always fun to take on. So we'll catch you again, hopefully before we get to the election, give you another chance to come back on the program. Thank you so much. And it's Friday, so blessed weekend to both of you.
Bless you.
Thank you for the opportunity, and God bless Chris.
That's my pleasure. All right, folks, that's Fatima Abdool, the Vice President of UIM, and Neil de Beer, the President of UIM. I'll let both you guys put yourself in the waiting room there, or I'll try to help you get there, and then I'll just wrap up because I've run over here. So, because it was really interesting. We really had a great audience there that was really engaged at the end. So I almost put myself in the waiting room. That would have been bad. All right, so there you go. So they're in the waiting room. Thank you all so much for tuning in, and thank you for your patience and for your questions. Anna Marie Nell, I'm glad I got to your question. Thanks for reminding me. And also to my moderators, thank you for doing a good job. If a few people had comments deleted, if you feel aggrieved, don't be. I looked back at some of those comments. Unnecessary profanity was put in there, and personal things were put in there that were unnecessary. So be adults and join the conversation, or find something else to do. Thank you so much for your support for Chris Wyatt Africa. I have have a premiere going on right this moment. It's already started. That's my second update on the elections. And I titled that video, Ramaphosa and the Grifters, a horror film 30 years in the making. So please go watch that video either now, catch it as you leave me, or catch it when it's over and watch it. Leave some comments. Please smash a like if you don't mind. Also, as well, folks, I will be on at 2:30 Eastern Standard Time. That's 8:30 South Africa, just under an hour from now, on Rugby Ascendant for live reactionary comments on Connacht versus the Bulls up there in Ireland. That'll be taking place in Galway. Please tune in for that, and we'll catch you later. Thank you so much to my guest, Neil, and to Fatima. It's a pleasure to have them on. And thanks to all my viewers who tuned in, and I appreciate your comments, your likes, your support for the channel. God bless. Have a lovely weekend. It is Friday. Normally, I would leave you with Giselle's Bourgeois, but I got to get off because I got to go to my premiere. Thank you all so much. God bless, and have a lovely weekend, folks. Cheers, and we'll catch you next time here on Chris Wyatt Africa. Thank you very much for tuning in for this stream. Be sure to leave a comment after the fact, folks. Appreciate you doing that, and we'll catch you here, as I said, in a bit. Cheers.